Hello, my name is Ed Brown, Managing Director at the American Academy of Advanced Thinking, and your host for Insights in Education. Today, I will be speaking with Lizabeth Phelps in our discussion, The Role of Thought Leadership in the New Economy. Elizabeth Phelps founded Inspired Leaders Academy in 2007 to provide a proprietary curriculum for subject matter experts and entrepreneurs seeking to deepen their influence and impact in the world. She earned her Bachelor's of Science in Advertising and Marketing from the Fashion Institute of Technology and worked in the creative departments of two advertising agencies in Manhattan before moving into Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous to become the editor of the show's companion guide for 5 years. She is currently installed on the Leadership Development Council at Seton Hall University and is an adjunct professor there as well, teaching thought leadership. Welcome, Lizabeth Phelps, to Insights in Education.
Hey there. So happy to be here, Ed. Thank you.
My pleasure. Elizabeth, let me just get right into this right away. How do you define thought leadership?
I define thought leadership. Well, I define a thought leader as somebody who shatters the status quo conditioning, either in a particular market for that particular thought leader or for the whole world if that's his market. My vantage point is that human beings kind of drink the Kool-Aid in many different areas. They kind of are in a certain trance, and the thought leader is there to wake them up. And so they're saying things that can rattle cages, if you will.
Okay, but you don't feel thought leadership is enough. Tell us about that.
Right, I don't, because thought leaders can be, from that definition, can be threatening. Right, if you're pulling the veil away, it can be scary. And so, if you are a thought leader, you are communicating, right? Usually on some sort of stage or platform, and you need to, you're not going to have intimate touch points with somebody. You can't touch their hand and say, "Don't worry, I'm rattling your cage, but all will be well." You're on a stage somewhere. You're kind of distant from them, and so you need to do that in other ways. You need to be what I call an inspired leader, an inspirational leader, somebody who that's actually the most influential of the two kinds of leaders, is somebody who can inspire. And my definition of an inspired leader is somebody who inspires others, causes them to aspire to something greater in themselves and greater than themselves than they ever thought possible, igniting a change. So that combination of the inspired leader can help those who have just had maybe the wool pulled away from their eyes, or the rug pulled out from under them, or however rattling their cages, to feel hopeful, and that they themselves can go to this new vista, this new territory, really, that the thought leader is asking them to. Because the thought leader is not just saying that the Kool-Aid they're drinking or that they're drinking Kool-Aid. Hey, you don't realize it, but you're drinking Kool-Aid. They're not just saying that. They're saying, here's a better drink entirely. Here's a better place to go entirely. And so the inspired leader helps them to trust themselves and trust other things, that doing so will be so much better for them. Does that make sense?
Makes a lot of sense. But I want to get right into that because I want to vet it out a little more. What inspired you to work with entrepreneurs on inspired thought leadership? Is there a story behind that?
Yeah, for sure. Initially, it was. It had to do with, I had been at that point, I had been a coach for 5 years, working with entrepreneurs and executives on their communication, and a lot of interpersonal communication more back then. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't my dharma. I felt like there was more to what I was here to do than one-to-one coaching, for instance. And what I noticed was that speaking was the way that I got clients. And I also knew that the way that I spoke, I should say my father was a minister, so I have some of that inspirational kind of way about me in my communication. And so I noticed that the way I spoke also really captivated my audiences, but it's what got me clients. So I segued in 2007 to developing and then teaching on a public speaking training. And it was based on something called brain-based learning, which is similar to accelerated learning theory, adult learning theories. And I wanted to use what was in educational science, bring it from educational science, what was helping students K through 12 learn better, and adults as well, of course, over to the platform of public speaking and making sure that the audience leaderships, right? Audience leaders, the speakers on stages, were captivating their audiences and helping their audiences retain what they were learning. And so much of accelerated learning, brain-based learning, is incredibly inspirational, incredibly empowering. So I was on fire when I learned about brain-based learning techniques and accelerated learning because I'm passionate about the human potential. And so what I loved back then was training people to be speakers who were highly inspirational and highly empowering. And what I was having them do was do that in a marketing platform, really, to get clients, but to also be so much more than that. So right from the get-go, my business was Inspired Leaders Academy because I was really, really passionate about that, and I still am, but over the years it became more about just getting business and much more about really, really having a massive impact in your environment, in your marketplace, in the world.
Okay, and you talk about the 5 pillars of inspired thought leadership. What are the 5 pillars of inspired thought leadership?
The first pillar is future visioning. So that's where the thought lead. This is 5 pillars of inspired thought leadership. So sometimes the inspired leader comes into one of these pillars. Sometimes it's the thought leader. So the first pillar is one of the domains of the thought leader, and that's future visioning. And so a thought leader has to, in order to make a strong argument, and that's a big piece of all of this, all these 5 pillars are woven together into a very strong argument. To make a strong argument, a thought leader has to know future trends. They have to know what's coming down the pike. Clearly, anybody who's going to be saying that this is not working, but this will, has to understand what's coming down the pike. So future for fortune telling, in a way, like this is what's going to happen, as well as future visioning. So they're seeing the future as far as trends, but they're also seeing the future, seeing things others don't see, right? Like this is possible.
Okay.
Right? So that's future visioning. That's the first one. The second one is breaking myths. Right, which is what I was kind of saying was the definition of a thought leader, is somebody who breaks myths, shatters the traditional paradigms. And so, as I've already sort of stated, what you're doing here is you're helping people to see the invisible paradigm that they're existing in, that they think is normal and okay, but actually isn't. It's not going to work for them, and it's certainly not going to work 5 years down the line. And so those 2 pillars are the domain of the thought leader. The third one is core beliefs, right? So at this point, an inspired thought leader message will be drawn from that leader's very strong core belief. And I have a way of developing and accessing a core belief in a leader. And almost everything I do, I'm a communication strategist, so everything's about words and everything's about thinking. And sometimes people's thinking can be unwieldy, so I help them condense it into fill in the blanks. Right? So each of these messages actually are single sentence fill in the blanks, and the core belief one is that as well. And what I'm having you, the blanks I'm having you fill in here are essentially it's your message for humanity. so it's not just for your market, it's for all of humanity. What is it that you believe is the greatest problem that humans perpetuate and that cause themselves suffering, and what is, do you believe, the magic bullet that will just take that out, take that problem right out? What do they have to do? And that is a different message from the others, and it's really the inspired leader message, like very, very powerful inspired leader message. And so that is the third pillar is that one. The fourth pillar is I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank all of a sudden. It's tribe building, right? Tribe building is also the domain of the thought leader, and of the inspired leader, and that is where you are building a tribe around your market. So I hate to use this as an example, but have you seen what's the name of that movie with Leonardo DiCaprio, The Wolf on Wall Street?
Yes, I have. Okay.
Hated the movie, quite honestly, but but at any rate, he was a tribe builder. He was the most amazing tribe builder ever. And do you know what I'm saying when I say that? Do you know? Can you bring to mind in the movie how he was that?
Almost definitely. He would give these arousing, motivational, inspired speeches, and he got people mostly in a frenzy, and that inspired them to get on the phone, make those phone calls to sell the stocks he was pushing. So definitely, and again, it was like a us against the world type mentality. So he isolated the people where they felt like they were on a team, inspired them with message, and then had a me against them against the world type situation. So
exactly, me against them. That you hit the nail on the head here. So in tribe building, what I often do is I draw a circle, and I'll say, think of this as a membrane. And what does a membrane do? It lets things in and it keeps things out. And so I put in the middle there is the I say you want to. I put the letter Q and Q, qualities and quirks. So what are the qualities and quirks of your particular tribe, your audience, your market, right? What are they? Put them inside that middle of that membrane and take note. Tell them what their qualities and their quirks are and how they are special compared to those on the outside of the membrane. And that's what Belfort did so magically. He was masterful at having his employees feel that they were incredibly special. He also assigned them a name, right? He called them Strattonites. Because his business was Stratton Associates or something. And over the years, I've always called my tribe inspired leaders, of course, and they have shortened it to ILs, we're the ILs. And so giving them a name creates this incredible tribe. And then the most powerful thing of all to create tribe is assigning them a mission. A mission for what they're here to do, that they don't even maybe think of themselves as being here to do. And when I do this with clients, oh my gosh, I can tell you, it just sends the whole messaging into a totally different stratosphere. And so that's what a tribe builder does, and it's very essential to do that as any kind of leader at all, right? And then the last one, and it's really not the last one, these are somewhat interchangeable, it's not like they come in a sequence, but is a new paradigm solution. So you've broken and shattered myths, but then you have to have a solution, and a thought leader, that's what they're known for, right, is to have some new thought, new idea. And this really should be new paradigm, though. It should be as far away from planet Earth as you can get, so that it's truly revolutionary. And that's what I want for my entrepreneurs, is that they stand apart from everyone else out there. And this is the way to do it, to all those other pillars, but to make sure that they have a solution that is not peddled by anybody else, really.
Okay, so just to recount, the 5 pillars of inspired thought leadership are future visioning, breaking myths, core beliefs, tribe building, and new paradigm solutions.
Right.
If we use those as the foundation for, say, young people entering the workforce, how would these pillars strengthen a young person's position as she or he enters the workforce as those already are in the workforce?
Oh, I just love this question because, this is how I positioned my class at Seton Hall University, was to say, to the powers that be there, listen, the only branding conversation that these kids get exposed to is the idea that, at this point, at 22 years old, they should look at, what's their personality like, and brand yourself on your personality, or what are some of the internships you've had, and brand yourself maybe from there, or brand yourself on a skill that you're particularly good at right now. And that is just not going to cut it. It is not going to cut it because there are many other people who have a similar personality, who've had better internships, who have skills that are more than yours. It's just not sufficient. But that's the only message they really get about branding. And so what I say is, go in there and be inspirational, but have a message. Have a message of what you think that companies, if you're going to be a company, work in a company, which I wish students would do only for a little while. And then I think that's the direction of the future anyway, that I think they're going to become entrepreneurial as a matter of course. But at any rate, so if you're going to go into a company, then go in there knowing who they serve, their market, and go in with some thought leader idea. Okay. That in your interview you're suggesting this, and you're breaking a myth for the person interviewing you, where the person interviewing you goes, wow, never thought of that before. And you, as a student, recite some future trends. And basically the future trends sentence that I have my clients fill in the blank on is basically, this is what's coming down the pike. If you continue doing things the way you are, you're going to be crushed, right? So if the student can say something like that and then have, look, I have a solution for this that I'd love to bring into the company, maybe not right away, but within the first 6 months or 10 months, hire me. That's a totally different position than going in with the way students are doing it now.
Totally agree. And when I think about a lot of the conversation that's going on these days about education reform, that kind of, in my mind, falls into that genre. How can inspired thought leadership become a catalyst for, like, say, education reform?
Yeah, that's a huge question, right? Well, education reform. Oh, go ahead, please.
Yeah, a lot of times you hear about the core curriculum or the needs for critical thinking, problem solving, and decision making. I'm thinking inspired thought leadership kind of falls into that genre. It feels like if I'm inspiring other people, I'm actually inspired what education is due, to draw out what's already inside you and maybe build something from that. I'm thinking they might fall into that category, but do you see it that way, or do you have a more expansive perspective about that?
No, I like that a lot, and I agree with you completely. And I'm just thinking that, education reform obviously is going to require that we stop the factory model. And, when I was growing up, which was now getting to be too long ago, I hate to say it, but we had something for a little while called an open classroom, where we were allowed in elementary school to just learn what we wanted to. And it was an experiment. And I strongly believe in that for education as we go and move out of this factory model and let kids get attracted and drawn to things and have teachers who are qualified enough, like they are in Europe and elsewhere, who have master's degrees and are highly qualified and highly paid and able to handle all the kids' interests as being very disparate from one another, rather than learning on a chalkboard and all the ridiculous ways that students are taught this day. I mean, lectures, all this stuff is ridiculous. And this goes to my brain-based learning, which is not about neck-up learning. You don't sit there and listen anymore. And the fact that that's still a model boggles the mind. And so what's the problem, though, is that, and you and I spoke about this once before, is that there are very intelligent things called chips that are going to be taking over in the job force, taking over for what factory learning can achieve, So, and artificial intelligence is going to be able to do a lot of jobs. And so education reform is going to have to ensure that students are thinking. They're not going to think at a higher level than an artificial intelligent robot. That's just not going to happen. But there might be other things that a human being can do, I don't know anymore, that an artificial intelligent machine can't. And it might be creativity, and it might be innovation, and those are the things that education's got to keep its eye on, and it's going to require that that students get a totally different kind of education, and that in order to stand out in the world when they're done, they're going to have some innovation, some innovative ideas. They can't go anywhere without an innovative idea very soon, I think, in order to get positions anymore. So that thought leader is that one who creates the innovative ideas. And, I don't know that AI robots are going to be Martin Luther Kings. I don't think I don't know how inspired and inspirational they are going to be. And so the combination of the two can definitely help the students who are going through a totally different education system. That's just the thought I've got with your question.
Well, I think that's huge because of Elon Musk of Tesla fame talks about his fear of AI or artificial intelligence for the future because of the possibility that it can do things that humans either can't do or are becoming more lazy about doing. So I'm thinking that if inspired thought leadership does that, it makes us more creative, makes us more inspirational, makes us more transformational. Most definitely, I'm thinking that we have to have that as I guess, the lack of a better term, a way by which we have a way of saving ourselves from being dispensable, because robots can do all these things, and it start envisioning as well as inspiring, then I don't know what chance or choice we will have as students in the workforce. How do we survive against a computer, particularly if it's cheaper and doesn't give us as much problems as human beings will give us based on their creativity?
Right, exactly. Yeah, I think we've got an uphill climb coming, and I think, work is going to be completely shattered before it's rebuilt. On an aside, I forgot, who was it? Was it The Atlantic? Anyway, about 2 years ago, I think it was The Atlantic Monthly magazine wrote an incredible article called The Future of Work, and I really recommend that you read it, that your listeners read it. And it's about a town in Ohio that was a coal mining town, and they were just decimated in the 1970s. There was no work. And so the author is seeing that town as sort of the canary in the minefield, so no pun intended, as showing us what's coming for everybody else. and what they've had to do, and how, of course there's been lots of incredible depression and alcoholism and all that, because what is work but the place where we get our sense of value and worth in the world. We get paid, right? We are worth something in the world. When we work, and if we're not getting paid, it's as though we have no value and worth. And so they've had to reinvent that definition, really, of value and worth. And they have become a very creative town. There are huge warehouses that have been reinvented to be entrepreneurial, kind of like idea labs and things like that. And I'm making it sound a little bit too exotic. It's not quite like that. But, people come and they have their little cottage industries that they sit and in this big warehouse and talk to each other and make their scarves or whatever it is they're doing. And but that town is a harbinger of what's coming for not just coal mining, but even cities, I believe. Cities are known to be sort of the center of the knowledge class, right? Right. But in the middle of the country, in the South, is where more of the traditional jobs are and are going to get blown up. But it could be we're all blown up, essentially, with AI. And so what are we going to do to reinvent our minds and what we do that's worthy, and valuable and all that stuff? I think we've got an incredible ride coming, and we've got to be conscious about it,
And that's key, because I think the perpetuity of civilization as we know it depends on that. And I'm thinking, you say that, I wonder what holds professionals back from becoming inspired thought leaders if, in fact, this is a way to save yourself. I think self-interest is probably the core of human nature, and yet sometimes we don't think at the levels that would save us from this AI or the new global economy and so on and so forth. So do you see becoming inspired thought leader as a way to kind of save yourself for the perpetuity of civilization?
Well,
maybe be a little dramatic.
I don't know that it's the savior or the bullet. I think there are much deeper answers, things that we have to rearrange inside ourselves in a much deeper way, spiritually and other, right? So it's a tactic that is very essential, I believe. And as you said, people aren't doing that, and that's the slowness of the bubble, the slowness of it. Again, as I just said a while ago, a thought leader sees the invisible paradigm people are living in that they don't see themselves. And so what you and I are talking about right now is that invisible bubble that people aren't seeing, right? And a trend that's coming down the line and so forth. And one of the bubbles, one of the things people aren't seeing is how much they're going to have to change. And they don't want to, and humans don't want to. And so that's why they're not doing this and why they're not studying to, because as I said, to be a thought leader, you have to understand what the trends. And so it requires, doing research on what's happening in the world, not putting your head in the sand, paying attention, especially right now, to politics, because what's happening politically is going to impact our future tremendously.
Definitely.
And so, yeah, I think it's required that people get their heads out of the sand and see that things are rapidly changing and are going to only be more rapidly changing. And so you've got to start thinking critically, and you have to start looking at problems. I have an inspired thought leader assessment that helps you see your strength and weakness as an inspired leader and as a thought leader. And one of the indicators, really, of of a thought leader is, and my brain just went right out of my head where I was going with that particular thing, that they certainly need to see the trends that are happening. I'm so sorry, everybody. I just went right out of my head. I was going somewhere with that. That the quality of a thought leader is, and I'm not going to remember it. I'll remember it at some point. Anyway, so it is very essential, though, that you always critically thinking. Oh, I know what it was. I knew it would come to me. That you're finding problems. You see problems. You see what others don't see. So that's a characteristic that people can start to cultivate, and the only way you're going to see anything is with your head out of the clouds and out of the ground. Yeah. And you start to notice and see what's missing. Look around you, what's missing or what's about to be missing in the next 3 to 5 years. That's where your thought leadership ideas can start to be formed from.
That's huge. That's huge. Now, I know you're always working on your own data and body of work. Is anything in particular that you're working on now?
Well, I think right now I don't have creative stuff happening for me because I just had the last 8 months have been insane in that regard. So I wrote a fable novella called The Tale of Wolf, His Snake Oil, and a Skunk, A Thought Leader's Hero's Journey. And so that was, a really big thing, and I'm going to have that on Amazon shortly, and then I have the Inspired Thought Leader Assessment. And so right now it's like just utilizing those things rather than creating anything going forward. And I've got my classes starting again in the fall, and summer's coming, so things relax a little bit. But, thanks for asking, though.
Well, Elizabeth, for people who want more on your book as well as things you're doing in the future or how to actually do more work with you, what's the best way to get in contact with you?
I think the best way is actually just to email me. And it's pretty simple. It's L. Phelps like Michael Phelps the swimmer, L like Lizabeth. I don't have an E in front of my name. So it's L. Phelps at my business name, which is inspiredleadersacademy.com. Past tense. Inspired is past tense. Inspiredleadersacademy.com. And I'm happy to, right now the fable is not accessible. There's only one way that it is accessible, and that really would be something you'd have to find out through me personally. And the assessment I can get anybody who emails me as well. So, and if you want to have a discovery call with me, that's a way to do that as well.
And I also will have a link after we finish the show where people can get in contact with you directly. So that would help to build that bridge with you. I want to thank you again, Elizabeth, for being a guest on Insights in Education. You gave so much information. It's kind of like we can go on for probably another hour or so.
Well, I so enjoyed it, and I just love, what you're up to in the world, and thank you for that, for being the role that you are and in thought leadership.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you coming on. And this is Ed Brown signing off again, another episode of Insights in Education. Thank you.